All right, so maybe your real estate agent is pushing you or encouraging you to offer upfront and it's some appraisal gap coverage, or maybe you got under contract and the appraisal has come back and it is lower or substantially lower than your contract value. What the heck do we do here? So an appraisal gap usually infers that there's a difference or a gap, right? That makes sense, between the appraisal value, the value that the bank sent out the appraiser. He's supposed to be objective, whoever really is objective, point for another video, but the objective value of that property and the contract value. So let's say you found a home at $450,000 and there are 10 offers on the property and you had to offer $475,000 to be able to lock it down under contract. The appraisal comes back and it's no greater than $465,000. So there's a gap now between the contract price, $475,000, and the appraisal value of $465,000. Now, if you did not promise upfront to that seller, which a lot of sellers in today's marketplace are looking for when they're evaluating offers, is the guarantee of that number that you have offered them, there are three basic things that you can do. So scenario number one is that if there's no appraisal gap coverage offered upfront, the seller can basically lower down the list price to whatever the appraisal value is. So again, in that scenario, that would be $465,000. Now, obviously the seller doesn't want to do that because you have offered them $475,000. Depending on how competitive the market, and they might say, hey, look, $475,000, you've got to come up with it in cash, or else I'm gonna let this contract fall through and go back on the market because the three people after you said, hey, I will pay that number, just give me the opportunity. And that might actually be true, but they have to run that risk of that actually happening. The second option is for you to meet in the middle. Let's just say that the buyer says, hey, I've only got $5,000 cash that I can cover. The seller says, fine, I'll lower it down $5,000, and you meet somewhere in the middle. Hey, if you're out in today's market and you want somebody that's actively bidding on properties and actually winning, and you need representation that knows what the heck they're doing, our real estate team and mortgage lender of choice would love to be your resource of choice. All of our contact information is down below in the description, and you can also jump directly into our calendars, just like Sean or King is probably showing on the screen right now. The third option is the seller basically forces you to come up with the full amount in cash, or again, they're gonna let the contract fall through. Now, most sellers don't want to do this, but it is a real possibility in today's market. So I had mentioned earlier this idea of offering the appraisal gap coverage up front. Now, if I'm representing a seller today and I know that I've listed the property at right where I think it should be valued, and I have 10 offers that come in and it's $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 above the list price. Rachel just had an offer go out in DC not too long ago that was $75,000 above the list price. That seller wants some assurance. They want surety of the number that you're giving them they're actually going to receive, because the bank is not going to write you a loan for just any amount. They want to kind of protect themselves. Let me give you a perfect example here. Let's say that I'm going out in today's marketplace and there's a house listed for $500,000 and I offer you $1 million. The bank is not likely to write me a loan for that amount. Now, if I was to pay cash, I can pay cash at any amount, right? So you can offer whatever you want. What the problem is that you get into is that as a seller, I want assurance that the number that you're sending over, that I am guaranteed that amount. And there's probably a number that comes into play where they think, the appraisal gap coverage that is going to be offered is actually going to be called into action. So let me give you one more example here of a client that I was working with recently. We went out into the marketplace. We saw a house for $365,000. I said, look, there are comps that could easily justify maybe even all the way up to $380,000, even $385,000, depending on the appraiser that you get. So any appraisal guarantee that you offer may or may not come into play if the appraiser is willing to write that value of $385,000, if that was something they were willing to write up to. The opposite can also be true. Let's say that for whatever reason, this seller is shooting for the moon on what they think they can get for the property. The house is listed for $365,000, but I say all day long, I don't know, guys. I don't see anything up to maybe $355,000 at $360,000. I think they're potentially overpriced even in today's crazy market. So if you do want this house that much, where you're gonna offer appraisal guarantee to actually win the bid, it's highly likely that that appraisal guarantee or appraisal gap coverage is gonna come into play, and you need to be ready and willing to bring that to the closing table on top of your down payment and closing costs, should that time arise. At the end of the day, you have to decide whether the appraisal gap coverage or the guarantee is something that you and your family can pull off. Like I said, you need to be able to bring that to closing, even if there's a strong argument that it won't possibly happen. You need to have those funds in guaranteed. I've actually had some sellers request guaranteed proof of funds of that appraisal gap coverage before they'd even would accept the contract. Now you can make this any gap difference. So if it is $50,000 above, you can say, hey, any difference between the contract value and appraised value, we will take care of. That is going to bring the seller a lot of assurances, but you may not have that full amount available, right? So maybe you only offer a $10,000 or a $20,000 appraisal guarantee. Now, obviously, if there are appraisal guarantees on multiple offers, the person that provides the highest amount guaranteed is most likely to win. Hey, if you found this helpful, the how to win against cash offers video, which is right here, probably will be just as helpful, if not more.